context of white supremacy. We will have, it looks like, about 60 seconds before I give Dr. DeGruy a jingle to have her on the program as well. Again, Black mental health, and same thing. I probably will get in a few questions to Dr. DeGruy and be more than willing to step aside. If folks want to get in questions, she should be with us for an hour. So if you have questions, if things came up from Dr. Robinson and you weren't able to get in to ask her, then you can ask Dr. DeGruy. I'm sure she'll be willing to give her views and thoughts on things that we can do for Black mental health. I did think it was important. She talked about some of the folks down there who've been active and protesting over the past, I guess, 4 months now in Ferguson, the importance of them taking time to replenish. Extremely important to make sure that you stop and nourish racism, white supremacy. It's damage to Black people every single day. It might not necessarily be a Tamir Rice damage or Renisha McBride damage, but it is damage every day. She was talking about the psychological torture, psychological trauma of all this. Just recognizing that and taking the time that you need to kind of heal. I think we talked about this before, doing things that are constructive, doing some exercise. I know Dr. Rasayan, he talked about the importance of listening to good constructive music, eating healthful foods, being able to have some constructive contact with other Black people, things that kind of help nourish the soul, to help you refuel, recharge, so that you can go out and continue to fight against the system of white terrorism. It is that time. I'll go ahead and give Dr. DeGruy a ring. You'll have to excuse the jingle. We'll get her on the line. And as I said, that's really set up for you also. If you have questions you want to ask, things that have happened, don't be bashful. Go ahead and get your hand up. I'm more than willing to step aside so that folks can get their questions in for Dr. DeGruy. We will give her a jingle and see if we can get her on the line right now.
Hello.
Greetings, Dr. DeGruy.
Yes.
Yes, this is.
You didn't ever send me the link, so I never was able to tell you it.
Oh, I texted you yesterday. Did you not get it? I texted it to this number.
I didn't get it. I got some real weird, crazy message. It had all kind of gibberish, but I didn't get anything.
Wow.
If that was it. Yeah, it was weird.
I don't know if that was
okay.
me. Okay, we are live though, but I'll email it to you so you have it. At least you'll have the archive if folks want to check that out. That's unfortunate, but
okay.
Tried.
Well, could you send that to me? That'd be great.
I'll get it to you this evening. We are live. For folks listening in, we had Dr. Marva Robinson just with us for the first hour with President of the St. Louis Association of Black Psychologists. She's been doing great work right at Ground Zero in the Metro St. Louis area for the last 4 months since the shooting death of Michael Brown Jr. As I said, this program all about Black mental health and encouraging folks to dial in if you have questions you would like to get Dr. DeGruy's perspective. She's been with us before, author of the world-renowned Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. Great read. Would encourage folks to check that out. I think folks probably saw Hidden Colors 3. She was also featured there and gave some great commentary as well that just came out this past summer. Always a pleasure to hear from her and great information. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of your Sunday evening with us, Dr. DeGruy.
Oh, you're so welcome.
For sure. I guess to start out, your book talks about how Black people, we are all experiencing, and a lot of our behaviors, incorrect behaviors, are the manifestation of generations of trauma from white supremacy, racism. I feel like that is being demonstrated, illustrated over the past 3-4 months with everything that we've seen. Michael Brown and Renisha McBride and Tamir Rice, and the list just goes on and on and on. Eric Garner. Can you kind of talk about how this is just another form of that collective trauma. I think Dr. Robinson, she used the term that this is psychic torture, what's happening to Black people.
Absolutely. Well, part of what we're looking at is basic trauma that we've seen and experienced over generations that's never been addressed. I mean, you talked about things in recent months, but in fact, these are the things that have been publicized in recent months. Nothing's changed from Jim Crow lynchings to contemporary lynchings, and what we see going on in the criminal justice system, police use of deadly force, health disparities, disproportionality, goes on and on and on. And all of these things, my concern as a person committed to healing is that we've normalized this. We're being treated like, if there's a shooting somewhere, any mass shooting anywhere, you'll see, everybody running in. Mental health folks, you got doctors in the borders, everybody's showing up. But we normalize this as though this is something that we should reconcile ourselves to. And yes, it produces trauma. And this trauma is passed along through generations. And after a while, it becomes adaptive, knee-jerk responses. And no one knows why, But if, you've been beaten down so much, after a while you begin to normalize what shouldn't be normalized. These are traumatic events. And I'm so happy to know that at Ground Zero that we had our people there that were providing support for those folks who've been traumatized. But, if you just look at any group of people that have experienced significant trauma, there are clear signs. And what I wanted to hopefully get to is how we can prevent the re-traumatization or vicarious traumatization as a result of being in the midst of these horrific events. And we, unlike other times, we relive them over and over and over again. It's on television. We see it over and over again. And this is traumatizing. It's not healthy for our children and our families to witness this and feel hopelessness and helplessness. And that's where, we have to come in and we have to do two things. One, we have to see to the hemorrhage that's in front of us. If we got a bleeding person in front of us, we got to deal with that immediately. And then we got to prevent you from injuring him, or anyone else. So we have to do both of those things. We have to deal with the systemic problems that are producing this. And at the same time, until these things change, we have to help our children and our families and our communities not become victims of this. In other words, how do we survive this extraordinarily oppressive and horrific experience that we are having now, 2014? That to me is where we have to begin to look. What do we do to prevent it, to interrupt it, to see to the needs of the injured? All of those things. It's not, it's and all the rest of this, not just either or, but all of this we have to deal with, and everybody has to show up for it.
Absolutely. Before we kind of get some of your thoughts on suggestions for how we interrupt this cycle of continuous trauma, just the importance, like you said, both of us being just really grateful, the Association of Black Psychologists being there to offer assistance and volunteering time and resources to help Black residents in the area. This is the 2-year anniversary of Sandy Hook, and for folks who remember, there were waves of grief counselors and folks to support and resources to help the folks recover. And just for Black people, we're not talking about one acute incident. This is centuries of Sandy Hook every day, all day long, for every member. And there's nothing comparable for Black people. Just can you emphasize the importance of that?
Well, again, there are two things that we have to look at. That it is not natural and normal for us to see folks gunned down in the street. For children to see the body of someone laying exposed and having been killed by folks that we have been taught are there to protect us. You see, there's a cognitive assault when that happens. And if we don't do anything, and that media plays that over and over and over again. And recently my niece, her son, she said, okay, I want you to, before you go outside, I want you to, put something on. It's cold. So she handed him the hoodie. He goes, no, Mom, I can't put that on. They'll kill me. It's a little kid. And she had no idea that he had internalized that. And he's all of 10 years old. And so what we have to understand is, first and foremost, no one's there to help heal us. No one's there to even suggest that we should not, just see this as a normal thing. And the scary thing is we are beginning to see it as a normal thing. When we have folks reacting to this, they have inappropriate aspect. They're kind of smiling and laughing as though there's something exciting going on. But that's because we've normalized it. We've made it something that young people in particular begin to accept and expect. And it doesn't just register on that level, and I'm sure, as we talk further, we can start looking at what this does to cortisol levels in the body, stress hormone. We have abnormal levels of stress hormone, and so I'm talking about this on a very real level. This is not philosophical. This is real. And if we don't deal with that, it's that very same stress hormone out of control that shortens life expectancy eventually, because it actually wears and tears on the body. So these are things that, of course, when you have a shooting of white children, or in an arena where we think the people have value, we're sending everybody. We're talking about it on the news. We're talking about how to take care of Cindy, who heard somebody say they saw something about a shooting, and they got someone there to help work through that, mental, emotional stress. But for our children, where is it? Where is it? Why isn't it showing up, in the media on the Today Show? Where, again, where is that assistance? And it's absent. And so I'm going, well, I'm not waiting for them to do it. Thank God we have the Association of Black Psychologists and Black Social Workers and what have you that show up for it. But we have to see the differential treatment, which is also traumatizing. It's the fact that you're treated so differently than anyone else. And then this was seen over and over again with things as horrible as the shooting to Katrina, to, Haiti. The differential treatment it's glaring.
Absolutely. You gave so much great information, but I want to go back to where you started at with your family member. I think you said it was your niece, and her child, him being afraid of going outside with a hoodie on. Particularly, Tamir Rice, it's not like this is just adults that we're seeing this. We're even seeing this happen to children. What sort of conversations would you recommend that black parents have with black children right now to kind of help interrupt that cycle and to help them process all this?
Well, you actually said the first thing, and that is you need to have a deliberate, directed, and intentional conversation. So this is not one of those things that we can go in your room, or, overhearing. We need deliberate, sit down, let me help you make sense of this. Let me put in context what you are seeing. And that is one of the first things to prevent the intergenerational transmission of trauma. One of the first things you do is you explain the events that have led up to the trauma, right? You explain it. And the problem is when you don't explain it, what happens to those looking on is these are unexplained, extremely emotional, and extremely tragic events. And what happens is they metastasize inside because there's nothing, you can't do anything with it. So the first thing you do is you explain it. You make sense of it. And there's a couple of ways. You give understanding and meaning to the cause of the events. So you give a context. Here's what goes on. Here's what happened. This wasn't fair. This wasn't just. This was, a situation where, yes, this is what should have happened, but this is what did happen. You even help them work through what they see in the media, not just what you say, but what they see. And you make meaning associated with what they actually see out there. And so the open communication about the traumatic event, and the reason you do that is if not, you start creating these unsymbolized, unspoken aspects of it in your mind, and all of a sudden they become dark, fearful secrets that you can't make sense of later on. They're just this emotional darkness that kind of overtakes people when you don't explain it. Then you give them access. You give them access to information. That's the other piece you do. You say, not only here, but here's some other information where if there's something they can read about or something that they can learn about, you give them that. The second, I guess it's probably down the list now, but one of the other things that you have to do is you have to ID the kinds of skills. So you move back to far from being a victim. We're resilient. We're going to make it through this. We've made it through this in the past. We'll make it through this. And here are the skills we're going to do as a family. Here's what are going to do as a community. Here's our resiliency, our strength, that in spite of this, we're going to carry on and it's going to be okay. And the way you make that real is you say, here are some things that have happened in the past. Here's some things that have even happened in our family. And yet here we are. We're still here. So you give a sense of hope and a sense of future in that way. And it really is, as simple as this sounds, it really does work, especially when you're working with communities of color and you're working with families. It gives them a sense of, yeah, this is tough, but we're all here together. We're going to all be here for you. The other thing that I think one of the things that's very important is everybody needs to very deliberately create some sort of a family or community narrative. In other words, a way to talk about this thing. Because if you think about it, I just walked into a restaurant, and I knew I was going to be doing this, so I'm kind of in the back room, but as I'm walking through, someone recognizes me and says, Dr. Joy, what do you think about all this? Now, I'm standing, getting ready to walk in the restaurant, and there's a group of black folks that are saying, what do you make of all of this violence and what we're seeing? And I have to figure out in a 10-second, a bite of information, how do I make sense of this right now so that they walk away feeling empowered, hopeful? Do you see what I'm saying? So when I say create a narrative, a way in which we can talk about this that leaves people feeling a sense of strength, resilience, and hope, right? So that's something that, yes, it's deliberate. And I've done it enough now that I know, again, I tell them this is nothing new. These are things that are being captured in the media, but they've been happening every day. We are bringing light to them. This is going to enable us. It is awakening people. I used all the words that are true, but that also speak to, this is tragic. It truly is tragic. I'm glad people are seeing it. It's not new, though. I'm glad we're finally understanding how systemically these things have been occurring. And now there are people waking up on both sides of the aisle just going, this is crazy. So it's a sense of hope, but at the same time realizing this won't change until systemically it changes. The systems that have, and those are systems of white supremacy, as you stated, but they're real. Every major institution in America is governed by them. So we have to understand that they are deeply entrenched within systems. So that's one. Again, learning, being able to communicate it, creating a narrative. And the other part is the process of taking care of oneself in this. And that means that you have to start looking at the kinds of triggers. You're looking at your family, looking at yourself, that kind of will trigger re-traumatization of the whole thing. That's why if you make sense of it cognitively, when other things occur, that doesn't re-trigger it. And one of the most difficult things are people like myself and others that are out there on the ground is not experiencing what some people call compassion fatigue or vicarious trauma, and that's a process of taking in so much and a desire to be empathetic that you kind of become emotionally injured yourself. So we have to also take care of ourselves around this stuff because it can be overwhelming. So, it requires that you're able to release some of this very toxic information and that you don't hold it in. So when I talk about that communication, that's also healthcare professionals, mental health folks, parents, to be able to create a release valve so that you are not getting that secondary trauma of feeling the pain that others are feeling. You understand what I'm saying? It's not that we ever stop caring, but that we take care of ourselves in this process.
Understood. I definitely want to get to, because I know adults are stressed around this as well, but just with the child
Absolutely.
component, what would your response be to people who say, hey, Dr. DeGruy, I don't even want to have these conversations with my child. I don't want them to be thinking about racism. I don't want them to go out and be thinking that there's some sort of war against them or have them have crazy thoughts about white people. I don't want to have that conversation at all with my 10-year-old or my 12-year-old or what have you. That's, I don't want to go there at all. What would your response be?
No, I totally understand. Nobody wants to. I remember Martin Luther King made a statement in, I think, the book Why We Can't Wait. He makes a statement where he says he remembers the day he sat on his mother's lap, and she told him the one thing that, and this was during, of course, segregation. She was taking that moment to sit him down and explain to him Jim Crow segregation. He said, but more importantly, she said to him, you're as good as any person. He said, but what he felt was, why then is there a need for you to tell me that? And so what we have to recognize is when those parents that feel the bite of not wanting to give them this picture, I guess my response is trust in God, but tie your camel. We can, for as long as we can tell them there's a world out there and it's great and it's wonderful, and all of that's true in terms of the potentialities that each human being is born with. But just in case you run upon crazy, here's what it looks like. Here's what it's looked like, and this is what you can do about it. So again, this is not about giving, and then also I'm talking about age-appropriate things. I'm not getting ready to release, 12 years a slave on a 6-year-old. I am going to give them age-appropriate information that helps them understand. Now, I'm going to give you an example of how to do that, okay? I'm going to give you an example of how you can actually do this. So I'm going to give a real-life situation, right? Someone asked me, this was years ago, they said, Martin Luther King celebration thing, and this group of people who were, as far as I could see, they were kind of a multicultural something or another, one of those kind of things. And they said, Joy, we'd like you to come in and give a talk about justice. Not just Martin Luther King, I have a dream, but justice, right? I said, okay, great. Well, what they didn't tell me is I was going to be talking to 3 to 6-year-olds. Okay, so 3 to 6-year-olds. So I go and I'm thinking to myself, again, these are 3 to 6-year-olds, and I think we underestimate what children can understand. So I walk in the room. This is a whole huge room of 3 to 6-year-olds. They're picking their noses and throwing things and sitting cross-legged in front of me. And I have a very short window to explain to them what is meant by justice, and specifically racial justice, right? So I'm talking about Martin Luther King, that whole thing, but I'm not going to use Martin Luther King. I'm going to use something they can wrap their heads around. So I asked 2 of the little kids in the room to help me, and I'm going to do a little play. And they're very excited. So 2 little girls got up, and I said, okay, we're going to do a little play. So one little girl was given a crayon and some paper to draw. And the other little girl had a toy. And I was the teacher sitting at the desk. And I whispered in their ear what I wanted them to do. So the little girl that had the crayon got up and left, and when she got up and left, the other little girl took a crayon. So now all the little kids in the audience, and they're watching this happen, so they come back, and when the little girl comes back, she notices that the other little girl took a crayon. So she comes to me and she says, teacher, she took my crayon. So I said, she did. So I asked her to get up. The little girl gets up. I stand them in front of everybody, and I said, did you take her crayon? And the little girl goes, yes. I said, say you're sorry. And the little girl goes, I'm sorry. I said, okay, now go back and sit down. So all of a sudden, the little kids in the audience are going, wow, wait. No, going, okay, well, wait a minute, let's do it again. So I said, did you take a crayon? The little girl said, yes. I said, well, then say you're sorry. And the little girl said, well, I'm sorry. I said, isn't that all we need to do? And I had them go sit down, and the little kids started jumping up in the room and waving their hands. And one little girl, she had to be about 4. I said, well, what else needs to happen? And the little girl goes, she got to give her crayon back. It's not okay to just say, I'm sorry. She needs her crayon back. A 4-year-old could figure that. I said, and that's justice. I said, that's justice. It's not enough for you to say you're sorry and everybody go their way. You've got to correct what you've done. And children can understand that. Now, how do you take that then and you fold it into a context that makes sense? Why did the policeman kill that man, Mom or Dad? How come a policeman did that? You've got to give context to that for children, or their perspectives or ways in which they manage and move through the world are going to be deeply impacted by that. Whether it's unresolved fear or angst or hatred or whatever it is, that is debilitating for them. You've got to make sense of what they're seeing. And you have to say, not everyone's fair, not everyone's just. And in those circumstances, here's what needs to happen. I mean, you have to make sense of it. And that's what I'm saying. So when parents go, I don't want to deal with racism and I don't want to tell them that, well, hey, your responsibility is to give them the tools to navigate a potentially violent terrain, which is America. Okay? That is my role as an adult and as a parent, is to give you tools to navigate it, not to stifle you with fear or to leave you alone with ignorance. It is to give you tools to navigate. So yes, we'd love for things to move this way, but in the event that things don't move this way, here's what we need to do and understand about that. And so that it doesn't take away from who you think you are or what you are or your wholeness or even your perspective of humanity as a whole, but how you navigate potentially violent, horrific terrain. Now, it's not always going to be there, but in case it is, I need to help you understand why, how it showed up in the past, what people have done to overcome it, and a true understanding that this too shall pass and we're going to overcome this as well. But, instilling a sense of hope, but I get that. Nobody wants to sit down and tell folks, the bad stuff, the tough stuff, but it doesn't have to be said in the context that instills fear, but rather one that empowers them.
Wow. Definitely appreciate that. I want to get folks who have questions. If you would like to ask Dr. DeGruy to get her views, feel free to chime in. The number 760-569-7676, and the code is 564-943#. Press *6 if you have questions. Definitely appreciate talking to the children, but as I said, I think a lot of adults are traumatized as well, and I think for some folks, they would kind of need to deal with themselves and their own trauma before they get to their offspring. I think you had touched on earlier the result of a lot of this and seeing these black people being gunned down with impunity, and it's on the 24-hour news cycle and how that impacts our own stress levels. And you were talking about the raised cortisol levels. They just had a report in the Atlanta Black Star talking about how, and they had it in the title, racism makes black people fat. And they went into detail about those cortisol levels start going up, and you compensate by eating a lot of foods that are not good for comfort foods, they call them, that are high in fats and sugar and all that, and just kind of the long range biophysical ramifications of racism and how that leads to the high blood pressure and even the
high blood pressure.
Exactly.
And diabetes in addition to that. Exactly. Because cortisol is pushed through the body, the glucose, and that's sugar. So, it does. And again, it overall lowers the overall life expectancy. I mean, that's just true. I mean, it's not the only thing, but it certainly is. Stress is, that's one of the number one things your doctor will ask you when you go to the doctor. No matter what you're going to the doctor, there's going to be a train. I didn't know there'd be a train. Anyway, when your doctor, you go in, they're going to ask you, are you under stress? Are you experiencing any excessive stress right now? This is before they give you the medication, before anything happens, because it exacerbates the ability to heal. Stress actually affects the immune system and lowers your body's ability to fight infection and illness. So they'll ask you, are you stressed? Now, here's the problem with black folks. Half the time we don't know we are because we normalized it. It feels so normal to see and experience crazy on a regular basis that some people don't even recognize it as a stressor. They don't even know what not being stressed feels like because being stressed is all they've seen and experienced. And guess what? It's what they perpetuate as well. So it's amazing. That's why it has this kind of self-creative force within it where, again, I know people, and I could say this to any of your listeners, that people who just got drama going on all the time. And when there's no drama, they create drama because drama translates into stress, which translates into normal for them. And when things are not agitated and crazy, it doesn't feel normal, just the opposite. And so you'll have people whose lives are in a constant state of crisis because they've normalized the crisis. They've normalized it, and it's killing us. It's killing us. And all you have to do, it's an amazing, I don't want to trivialize this in any way, but you can interrupt it with knowledge. You can interrupt all of that, say, hold up. I just want you to know, and let me just tell you, I have been on the ground. There was a shooting with the program. One of the programs I work with, 3 kids were shot. Luckily, no one was fatally wounded. But I'm dealing with kids in jail. I had to actually meet with a family in jail. I had to go to the jail. I said, no. I said, I can't help you unless I get everybody in the room. So I had the probation officer, had everybody in the room. And just to give you an example about normalizing this stuff, this is a young adult, you know. So this person, I asked her, and she was in there for assault, and she beat up someone and took their money. It was assault and theft, or I don't know what all they had in there. So I said to this young woman, I said, how did we get here? How did you end up here? I just want, because everybody was, in the room trying to feel normal. I said, no. I don't want to come here again. So I need to find out how you understand how you got here. And I'm going to explain what this is in a moment in more, more straightforward terms. But I want you to know what I did with this family, because I only had like 30, 40 minutes. So I said to this young woman, what did you do? She goes, oh, well, my friend and I, we stole some pants, and then we went over to, I said, hold it up. Hold up. She said, well, we stole some pants, and, I said, well, wait a minute. I said, you said that like that was normal. And you see, to her it was. And I gave her another example of a family I was talking to a young woman who had a similar response when I asked her, how she got in her situation. And she talked about how she, this was actually a young white woman who was talking about how, she had slept with her father and then her uncle and her cousin and her brother. And everybody in the room in the jail where we were, the whole family was like, what? Wait a minute, that's some craziness. I said, that sounds crazy to you, doesn't it? They said, yeah. I said, it didn't sound crazy to her because why? They said, because it was normal for her. I said, but was it normal? And they said, no. I said, so what you just said to me, you said to me like it was normal. And all the things that follow it, you've made normal. Just like your little brother in here thinks it's normal to visit his sister in this institution. I said, and you're helping this seem normal to him. And so what I do with folks is I just give them a mirror. Because if you don't interrupt it and say, no, we can't get to the next statement about how you got caught or how you hit the woman or how she beat you up, so we can figure out how come you think you can roll that out to me like it's something normal. And what I'm saying is, this whole family, long story short, everybody in the room crying, everybody in the room talking about how it all started for them, why it felt normal. It turns out everybody in the family did that stuff. Mama did it. Mama done the time in jail. Dad had done it. I said, so what have you taught each other? And what are you now teaching your little 4-year-old brother who's in this room, who was asleep at the time? I said, well, what do you think you're teaching him? And the young woman is crying now. I said, and what life are you paving for him? And these are all things that are right there. He was in the frame, can I see the picture? I said, so why help you see the picture? I said, I'm not coming back here. I don't do this. I said, I'm not doing this with you. I'm never going to work harder to help you than you need to work to help yourself. But you can't fix what you don't know. And that's where I think this comes in. When we talk about our people, when we talk about African-American people who have long suffering and who have passed along the good and the bad, I'm not mad at them. I get that. I said, well, we've got to know and understand what are those things we've learned and we've moved through our lives with that we need to get rid of. But we got to stop acting like it's normal. We got to stop co-signing crazy. That's one thing. And we have to start looking, walking, and talking the health we're hoping to promote. You can't tell people. You got to show people. You got to hold their hand. You got to get in there with them. This is not a lecture. This is, let me be clear with you. Let me roll up my sleeves with you and help you understand where I came from. I didn't just fall off the turnip truck. I have seen some things. Dr. Joy, whatever you think about her. I said, here's some reality. You look in any family, you're going to find some ugly stuff. I said, but it's not about it's about how we're going to move forward. Because I know the crazy in my family. I decided not to pass the crazy along to my children. And hopefully whatever crazy I've given them, they ain't going to pass on to my grandkids. The blind spots that I have. But you see, no one goes into families with those intents. Nobody works with black people or cares enough to say, let's sit down and figure out how you want to move through the world and what you want for your life. Let's be really, really clear about what and how you have cognitively structured your reality, how that's in the way. Nobody, who does that with people? Who does it? Right? It doesn't happen. And all I'm saying is that part of the healing is helping people understand. I don't save people. I don't fix people. You fix yourself. You know what I mean? But I can't fix it if I don't know it's broken, if I don't even know what broken looks like, if I don't know what health looks like. Right? So for me, it's really straightforward. I don't care who you are. Like I said, I work with folks in jail. I've been in prisons. I've worked on the street. I've been in religious organizations, everywhere. Anywhere you show up, I will work with you where and how you are. And you'd be amazed. It's magical how little they need to move forward. Just a little bit goes a long way. A long way. But what we cannot do is back away from what's in front of us. You know, I've been dealing with, matter of fact, very recently, a young man, African-American male youth, you know, and his whole idea is, you know, it's very kind of critical of everything that's going on, and, you know, you just need to do this. I said, you know what? I said, here's my sense. I said, before you look at your people and you make this assessment, you need to educate yourself about who we are. And that's kind of what I told him. I said, you don't get to shake your head and go and point if you're not doing anything to help. You don't get to do that. Especially if you don't know what it's taken for us to come this far, because, you know, he has no historical memory. So, you know, so I deal with him differently than I deal with the girl that's in jail with the little orange suit, different than the person that's outside the restaurant that asked me my take. But we got to deal with everybody. The bottom line is we got to show up for this, and everyone must show up for it. Mama, daddy, cousin, Pookie, you know, everybody. Big mama, everybody got to show up for this. Because it's the only way that we can move through. That's called village.
Context of white supremacy. I will hit the phone lines to see if folks who have showed up, if they have questions for Dr. DeGruy. Again, press *6 if you have questions you want to get in. This is going to be a bit of a task because some of the folks had hands up for Dr. Robinson, and they're still here, so I don't know if they have new questions or what, so we'll work it as we go. I do see new hands, so I'll try to get the people that dialed in who did not ask before. I'll get them first. That seems just. The caller, you're dialing in, I guess, through the flash phone or what have you. Did you have a question for Dr. DeGruy?
Yes. Good evening, Gus. Good evening, Dr. DeGruy.
Good evening.
I'm familiar with your work, and it's been helpful and very constructive. I just wanted to make a comment first and then ask a question, if that was okay. I recently attended Dr. Frances Quest Welsing's institute that she has on Thursdays at Howard University in Washington, D.C., and one of the participants, one of the audience members in the group, after the presentation was over, after she gave her lecture, came to her with some information, and it was actually a penmanship exercise that is given to young children when they are learning to write. And this is addressing how the system of racism, white supremacy induces stress and negative self-images into black children and normalizes it. You know how when you have these penmanship exercises where you have a word and you have a picture of the word, and the word is actually like in little dots, and you're supposed to trace it in order to learn how to write? Yes. Well, there were 4 words on this piece of paper and 4 images. The first 2 words were happy and good, and there are pictures of 2 white children. And then the other 2 words were bad and angry, and there are pictures of 2 black children. My biggest concern was that we as parents may not even be paying attention to these type of things. We're just happy that the kids are learning how to write. And because of the lack of knowledge that we have, we're not even understanding that this is damaging to this child because they're internalizing, and they may even feel some stress because of this, because they think that bad and angry is them, and happy and good are the white children. I just wanted to bring that out because you were talking about
Sure.
stress, and that is one of the ways the system induces stress into our children, and, that becomes normalized. But my question was, a previous caller asked a previous guest about honesty, and on the context of white supremacy, she mentioned that Gus always asks our white guests that they be as honest as possible in their dialogue, because that's going to help us solve this problem, the honesty and dialogue between black people and white people. So, in saying that, I just have one question. Do you believe that it is beneficial and constructive for black people to internalize and verbalize to white people the reality that we are living in a system of racism, white supremacy, and until white people stop practicing racism, white supremacy, that we should expect to be killed and traumatized? That's my question. I'm
going to try to understand what you're saying. I think your question was whether or not I think that it is appropriate or that black people should tell white people that about the system of white supremacy, and that then unless there's a change, we can expect to continue. I'm trying to understand what the question was. I kind of get the context as it relates to having the open dialogue. One of the things that I've noticed about all of these events that have gone on recently is that it's had a global response. You got people in India responding to Ferguson. You got people in China responding to the whole world is looking on. So when we start looking at the dialogue, I think we have to start looking at reality. And the reality is we live in a global reality. It's no longer a neighborhood or even a nation. We're a world. And so the world is looking on, and the world is participating in this dialogue. And the dialogue, I think it must happen. And I've talked to people from every kind of background, religious, race, folks who really get it. Matter of fact, I have talked to some white people who get it a whole lot more than black people get it. Some black people, very injured black people, get it. So I'm saying that, yeah, the dialogue needs to happen, but dialogue's not enough. It's okay. I'm not interested in catharting and having this catharsis so everybody feels good and they regurgitate all the ugly, horrible stuff and everybody goes home and nothing changes. I don't sign on for any of that. I don't do that with anybody, nor do I recommend it. This is not about me, all of a sudden ripping off all the scabs to prove to white people that, I've been injured. I'm not doing that. I said, but I do believe, the dialogue has to happen, but not just a simple dialogue, one that leads to some sort of change, whether that's policy, whether that's immediate, whether that means, from small things to large things. But change must happen. And if it becomes just a dialogue where people are spilling their guts and, really pretty much sharing the obvious with no responsibility or accountability, I'm not interested in that. I'm not. I tell my students that. When I work with folks, there's certain things I don't do. And I'm not mad at people. I think people, I accept people where they are. Some people are at a level where they don't know what to do or say, so they march, so they just show up where all the crowds are as a way of showing solidarity. I'm not mad about that. And then there's some folks, like my sister Michelle Alexander, that's working at it from a different vantage point. That's exposing a truth that is not normally exposed from the vantage point of litigators or attorneys. So I think there's lots of room for dialogue, and we must, because again, we're not looking at a little thing. We're looking at a big thing. How we move through the globe. Right. So I think, but I do get, and Frances and Chris Welsing and myself, we've done some work together, and Frances is brilliant. It's amazing. But it's also amazing how little we know. So my first response is always, let's educate so that we can make some reasonable decisions about how we move forward.
Thank you for taking my question.
Okay, you're welcome.
Appreciate that. Person that dialed in, last four digits. Ooh, I think I'm making me work. I think it's 5591. Caller at 5591. If you give me 1 second, your line should be open if you have a question for Dr.
Can you give me the station number again? The station folks want to to be able to go online or?
Black Talk, the Black Talk Radio Network. If they put that in, it should pop up easy. And,
Black Talk Radio Network.
Yes, ma'am. If they put that in, they'll be able to get the program. They'll see the cows button, and they can, as soon as they hit the page for the context of white supremacy, it should start playing automatically. If it doesn't, they can just hit the play button on the player.
So it's Black Talk
Radio Network.
I'm sorry. Radio Network.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Caller at 5591. Are you with us?
Yes. How you doing, Gus? Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Okay.
All right. Thank you to the guests. I appreciate your words and everything. And I'm going to have to go to the archives and listen to your past time on the show. I had a question basically in reference to parenting and how you was talking about how the person that you had spoke with in jail, how some of their parents had did the same things. I wanted to know which things you felt was hereditary or passed down to the child, as far as like personality traits, or what all things can be passed down to the child that we should be concerned about.
I didn't hear the first part of the question, and correct me if I'm wrong. So your question is what kinds of things can be passed down through generations to children? Is that what you were asking?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so there. I mean, almost everything we have is kind of been passed down to us. How we learn, just basic fundamental things. And from the vantage point of race and racism and identity, all of those things, the caller before her question, and her talking about the children and the images and how they were learning the images. So as they were swallowing and learning how to write, they were also swallowing images of themselves that were maybe even subconsciously placed there that made them feel negative, right? So she was talking about that. So we pass along things in our very consciously, verbally, and we also pass along behaviors non-verbally, right? So in other words, we can teach our children things by not necessarily what we say, but what we do, or how we respond mentally or emotionally, or even physically. It's like if you have a dog, for example, you see a dog, and you've ever seen a dog that no matter what you do when you come near it, it cowers. The dog will cower because the dog has become accustomed to being hit. So every single interaction or action towards the dog cowers because that's what it's learned, right? So learning, it's called social learning. Social learning is what we get in our environments. For example, if you've ever been around black folks, and this is really interesting, when black people be talking about, like I talk about race, it doesn't matter where I am. I mean, I don't want to disturb anybody, but I don't lower my voice when I say white people. You talk to somebody black, and all of a sudden when they say white, they lower their voice, as though they're going to get in trouble if they say white, out loud. And it's an interesting thing. I've noticed it. But it also, if you're a child and that's your mother and that's your brother or that's someone significant to you and they're lowering their voice, you have to interpret why. Now, I'm not trying to place any meaning on that, but the bottom line is we learn. And we learn things like, what's pretty, right? What's pretty? You hear someone say, gosh, she was a really pretty girl, even though she was dark. Right? Even though she was dark. So there's a fundamental assumption there that is somehow surprising that she is both beautiful and dark. Do you see what I'm saying? So it almost sounds like a compliment, but then it's not. And so these are things that because we've learned those things. We've learned them, and we are consciously and unconsciously passing those things along to our children. Things like good hair. I mean, there's certain things that are really flagrant and obvious. Oh, he had good hair. What is that? Right? What is that about? We're still doing that in this 2013. Right? So those are the kind of things that get passed along as well as resilience and strength that gets passed along. A sense of pride, a sense of power, a sense of hope, of individuality, of creativity, of art. All of those things get passed along too. There's poison in the cookies. And the poison in the cookies as it relates to my work are those negative parts of what we have come to swallow as a result of racism and white supremacy that we have swallowed. Like they just did a redo. A young 16-year-old did it, right? I think it's called A Girl Like Me. Well, she repeats the doll study, the doll study, right? The dark doll, the white doll, and the black doll, and which doll that each child will choose. And she found the same results, in the last 5-10 years. The same results of black children choosing the white doll. But not only that, she added a part to it. She said, which doll is the nice doll? And, she started folding in all kinds of things, and they would pick the white doll. Why is that happening? Why is that still happening? That means that the learning is getting passed along, rather it's being deliberately done, consciously or unconsciously. We're passing along the crazy stuff, the nonsense. And that's probably because we've never examined it. We've never examined that, right? People are missing that whole piece. And part of that, to the caller, I don't want to over-answer your question, but part of this has to do with the fact that we don't know who we are. We are not educating ourselves or our children about who we are or the shoulders that we stand on. We have no clue. And then we have, some of those idiots out there in the media that they themselves have not been educated, but have been placed in roles of authority, and all of a sudden they get the mic. The fool. Someone who, basically spent their whole life bouncing a ball, but now they're going to give the social commentary on black people. Right? And then everybody listens to them. And guess what? They're ignorant, and the people before them were ignorant. And that therein lies the danger. We have to be deliberate and intentional about educating ourselves about who we are, all of it, all of who we are, so that our children then are equipped to move through the world in a way that is productive and that, in fact, they will advance them and excel.
Appreciate that question, caller, and the response. Caller at 6492, last four digits, 6492. Did you have a question for Dr. DeGruy?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. I really appreciate you guys for pulling this together. This is excellent. And one thing I realized, Dr. DeGruy, when she started, and when she said something that really hit me, that why I'm kind of struggling with this so much, is that I think my kind of whole worldview has been flipped. When we went through Trayvon Martin, I watched the trial, I followed it closely, I saw the evidence, and I was surprised that in this day and age, that, the verdict was what it was, that George Zimmerman was set free, even though there was all these contradictions and all these lies. Well, okay, maybe that's a fluke. Then we get to Mike Brown, and, here we go again. And I think the one that really, gave me the impact was, okay, here's Eric Gardner. There's no way they can lie their way out of this one. What are they going to say? It's on tape, the whole ugly, awful encounter, and the ending, the horrible, tragic ending, where that poor man, they choked him till he stopped breathing, didn't do anything for him to try to save him. So, okay, so how do you get out of this one? You arrest the videographer, and I guess they announced that they're going to do some retraining where they're changing the name of the hold. It's not a choke hold. It's a lateral neck or something. And so that's the thing. I'm looking at these people differently, and I really don't know how to adjust them. I can't really walk around in the world saying, well, all these people are evil, but all I see is evil.
I think that, I feel your pain. I feel your pain. And for me, I guess the way I look at it at this point, I really was not surprised by the Zimmerman verdict. I was actually sitting down with an African-American judge when the verdict came in. We were together when it happened. And, again, the laws, you got to go all the way back to the Constitution of the United States and understand that to ensure the domestic tranquility did not include black people. Okay, that was not about us. That was actually protecting people against us, right? That's what that was about. So we look at the fundamental laws of America. They were never designed to protect us, African Americans, because you have to understand the intent was for us not to have any rights, period. So we have to understand that everything since then, just to kind of give you an example of this, I'm a person that likes to go fishing. My father, I was raised fishing, so I was looking recently at a place to go fishing in the Bay Area, and I'm new to the area. And my husband and I went to Folsom Lake, and there's a place there called, and we were looking at the map of the little park where you can go fish, swim, and in there was a place called Negro Bar, right? So I looked at my husband, I'm going, why me? Why? Why me? So I go over to the woman at the little office, and I go, excuse me, can you tell me Negro Bar? She goes, yeah, and then she starts pointing to where it is. I said, no, I don't want to know where it is. I want to know why it's called Negro Bar. And so then I get, the Dora eye blink, nothing. She has no clue. So then I go and I do some investigation. And after considerable research, I go and I actually find out the national site that names major areas, major sites in the United States and Canada. I went to that site. It's actually an official governmental site that gives names to things. And I found out, I said, well, Negro Bar, and they go through great lengths at the beginning. I can't figure out what they're saying. They're saying, well, we will never in any way write a derogatory name. And they go through this whole thing, and then I realized that they're trying to explain how Negro, it being changed to Negro, was when it was originally called nigger. Okay, so I said, okay. So I said, so why did they go through this? They said, well, for example, Nigger Ridge is Negro Ridge, and Nigger River is Negro River. And I'm going, okay, 52 pages of things called nigger. Now, I'm giving you an example of I'm 57 years old. I had no idea. not 52 entries, 52 pages of entries. So when we start talking, for example, just have that conversation about the N-word, oh my God, they really want to use that N-word. Because it's what and who we were entrenched so much that 52 territories, 52 places in the United States and Canada, 52 pages of places in the United States and Canada. So what I'm saying is what we don't understand is the etiology of what we see. We see it now and it feels so crazy and wrong, but what we have to understand is nothing's changed as it relates to this. It is a systemic, it is an institutional problem. And so when I see it, here's where I am now. Because I grew up, I was a 60s child. I went to the Black Panther breakfast program. That's where I was. So I grew up with that kind of, awareness. And I now have to sit down with my sons and my grandsons and my nieces and my nephews and explain to them, how do we, in an environment of hostility, survive? Because, you see, that's what we're living. We're living in a hostile environment. And we have bought the illusion of inclusion to such a degree that we're thrown off when we see it. I'm not thrown off, but I tell you what, we need to start teaching black boys how to survive interactions with police officers. We need to figure out how to reestablish community and a sense of community and village so that we can protect our children and our families. But one of the biggest problems we have is our lack of awareness of a system that is intrinsically designed to not support us. And I'm not just trying to be mean or harsh. I'm talking about the etiologies of laws in the United States. And so for me, part of what we have to do is, again, trust in God, please do, but tie your camel. Because I may be paranoid. Unfortunately, folks are also following me. So all of those things are true. No, I don't look at any group of people or anything and go, all of anybody is any particular way. The world is far too big a place. But in the meantime, if you're living in America and in urban America, you got to wake up. And part of what we have to wake our children up to, wake our children, our youth up to, is the legacy that's been handed them. And they don't know, and shame on us for not telling them. And shame on us for believing a system of education is going to tell them. They're taking away what was there now in terms of education. So the onus, it falls upon all of us who do know that we have to then begin to write it. I don't care how you do it. If you're a writer, write about it. If you're a singer, sing about it. If you sweep floors, make sure you're talking to the people passing. I don't care how it gets transmitted, but we need to educate ourselves and our children. That is the greatest defense moving forward, because ignorance is our greatest enemy at this point.
Appreciate the answer to that one. See, before the hour concludes, see if we can get in one more question. I'm looking at the folks that are on. I'll pick to see if folks have questions. The caller at, oh, wait a minute. The caller at 8418. Did you have a question for Dr. DeGruy? Your line should be open. Give me 1 second and I'll... Caller at 8418. Did you have a question for Dr. DeGruy?
Yes. Greetings, Dr. DeGruy.
Greetings.
Can I be? Oh, hey. Yes, this is Indiana Jones. Just wondering, how much of a factor does fear play in the execution? Deadly shooting, no execution of black people by law enforcement within the victims who are targeted by law enforcement?
Great question. I'm going to recommend a book, and the book I'm going to recommend was written by Norm Stamper. Norm Stamper is a 34-year police veteran. He's a white man. 34 years, wrote the book in 2005, and it's called Breaking Rank. The name of the book is Breaking Rank. And the reason why I'm recommending it is Norm Stamper, again, Chief of Police for San Diego and Seattle, wrote this book and talked about how he was trained in the academy. And he says the truth of the matter is white police officers are afraid of black men. Now, as a social scientist, I know that it's not just white police officers. It's white people. Recent studies suggest that the bigger and the darker you are, the greater the fear. In fact, white people will see a black person, and every single time when they describe them to be bigger and darker, because those are two things that go parallel with their fear, big and dark fear. And so fear plays a huge part of this. And I'm glad you brought it up, because there is even more fear now. I want you to hear me. There's even more fear now. And because of that, there's likely to be more of these shootings. And so that's why we need to be really, really cognizant of that very thing that you said. Fear plays a huge part. But then, if we had more time, I could talk about why you're so scared. Okay? Then we could talk about why are you so afraid of black men? And might it be because you know the injustices, and you know that if it were you, how angry you would be. And so there's a whole lot of deep psychology around that fear, so much so that our children aren't even seen as children. When the little boy that was recently shot, they thought he was someone in their 20s. He was 12 years old, right? So these are things that, and see, for me, and I want to end here because I know this is where I have frustration. There are things that we know. In other words, when I say things we know, there's a preponderance of evidence. All right. So there's a preponderance of evidence around this notion of white fear, the fact that, immediate knee-jerk, unconscious response to blackness is fear, anger, all kinds of negatives. If we know this, now if we know that there's a preponderance of evidence, not just one study or two studies, this is pervasive. So much so that teachers in 2014, 2 children off task, doing the same off-task thing, teacher doesn't see the white student, only sees the brown or black student. That's a recent study. So now what that says to me is, as a parent, now I'm a grandmother, but going in, when I walk in the classroom and the teacher is white, male or female, doesn't matter, go, hello, hi, nice to meet you. I need to know what you're doing to mitigate your inherent tendencies to see negative behaviors in children of color. I need to know what you are consciously doing about that. See, that's different than, well, let's talk about diversity and let's talk about bias. No. I want to know how you as a teacher are managing or somehow mediating your tendency to see that. What are you doing or what is being done in the school to make certain that you don't behave, which is a way that you are more likely to behave, typically based on the data. See, that means accountability. But we don't walk in the classroom and say to the white teacher, we just hope they don't treat our children differently. We just hope it. Instead of saying, you know what, there is this tendency, I don't know if you're familiar with this research or this data, here it is, okay, which suggests that there's a preponderance of evidence that teachers like yourself, although unconscious, may in fact, unknowingly do these things. What are you doing to safeguard my child in this classroom? You see, that's what we need to do. That's what we need to show up for. And they can go, well, I'm not a racist. I'm not concerned about what you think. I'm talking about what the data tells me. And I need to know my child is safe in this classroom. That's different, you see. That's coming at it from a vantage point of knowledge. I'm not making this up. And if you say, well, you know what, I'm glad you said that. We are doing a number of trainings. We also have someone in the classroom. I don't care what you do to mitigate it, but you got to do something. You can't sit here and tell me to hope that you're not going to do what is typically done. And it's done not on occasion, but consistently. You see, that's the difference. We want to go on and pretend we don't know what we're talking about. I can't do that. I can't afford to do that and put my children's life at stake. I'm not doing it. Now, you may get mad, may get your feelings hurt, or you know what? You might have to start paying attention to the way you treat children of color. Because this parent is going to show up again and again. That's what I'm saying. Accountability, all the rest of it is a wash if there's no accountability. Because I don't care if you like me. This is not about trying to get people to like me. You know, we are the world. That's not what this is about. You don't have to like me, but I'm going to insist that you treat me with justice, equity, and respect. I'm going to insist upon it.
Yes, ma'am. And, I don't mean to be disrespectful in saying this. I'd rather not give Norm Stanford my money. I mean, I've heard him on the program a couple of times. Somebody has a PDF.
No, read the book. Go to the library. Don't buy it. You have to buy it. Go to the library. Whatever you got to do. The reason why I say that is because the data's there. The data's there. Not only there, I mean, there's a lot of places you can get it. But the point is this is someone, and Norm, the one thing I do know about Norm Stanford, they went after him. He got folks indicted. He didn't just say it. He got people indicted. And so his ability, because, come on. He actually sat down, interviewed them, and got folks taken out for it. And as a result, they've gone after him. But the bottom line is, he says, here's the truth. Here is the truth about this academy. And he has a dismal belief about the future. It's dismal. He don't have happy, joy around it. So part of what the book is a warning. It's a warning to anybody of color to understand how the institution operates. And every black man, woman, and child needs to understand how that institution operates. And I don't care who wrote it. I take truth from wherever it comes. So, again, the key, though, is once we understand it, then we got to figure out what the next steps are. Because it's not enough. That's what the diversity game is all about. We don't just sit around and, talk about diversity and, racism and all that, and everybody's going to stand up and clap, and everything remains the same. That's what that game is. And I'm saying you're absolutely right. Fear plays a huge part in this. But what we got to understand is the nature of the fear. When you start talking about the nature of the fear, then you're talking about the legacy of hate. And the legacy that is how and where we came into this arrangement here in America. So you can't separate it. And the problem is a lot of our young people, bless their hearts, have no clue about how the past has produced what we're seeing today. See, they don't understand it. So they don't know how to deal with it. And I'm saying all of them, because, again, where are you going to learn about it? I didn't learn about this in school. Really? No. So what is your responsibility, my responsibility, in educating people, in educating them about what is truly going on and what they've inherited? We've passed the baton, and they don't even know what race they're in.
Yes, Dr. Joy, as far as education goes, my family thinks I'm crazy. My friends think I'm crazy. Everyone I try to tell our real history to pretty much thinks I'm a nut. I'm like, I don't want to go into examples, but do you know of a way, this is my last question, do you know of a way to better convey our history as a people to our people without sounding crazy?
Yeah, I completely get what you're saying. That's why, when I started doing the work, my work started on the ground. I'm a clinician, a mental health. I do stuff on the ground, worked hand in hand. What I figure is this: use I start looking at what people listen to and pay attention to. I have stuff in video form. I have it in CD form. I have it written. I will, if folk got to sing it. Even now for my presentations, I have tapes that my husband put together some music, which is a prelude to my talk, and then I have some closing music. All of it is conscious music. All of the words are educating, right? So I'm using music, which is a very powerful force